Good morning. I have 9 o'clock, so we're going to call this meeting to order. I'm Lena Kisner, the new chair of SEAC, and appreciate everyone being here. We're going to go ahead and get started with a roll call. And once we get through the roll call, if we have not covered your name, then we'll ask you to introduce yourself. So Joyce, are you ready?
Autumn Biltz, Sydney Dringman, Jennifer Flores, Brandon Gay, Whitney George, Lindsay Graff. Lindsay did notify me she couldn't make it today. Rebecca Helgett.
Present.
Jennifer King.
Here.
Dr. Lena Kisner.
Here.
Jennifer Kaczynski. Jennifer Kurth. Dr. Jessica Lopez.
Here.
Dr. Marvin Miller.
Here.
Bradley Miller. Dr. Brooke Moore.
Here.
Charity Porter. Rebecca Schultz.
Present.
Dr. Sean Smith.
Morning.
And Roxanne Zillinger.
Joyce, this is Jennifer Flores. I didn't wish I made fast enough on Hannah.
Okay, thank you.
Joyce. Good morning, Joyce. Melanie Haas, I just walked in.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Joyce. Do we have a quorum?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay. All right. If you were not called through the roll, we would ask you to introduce yourself. Alicia, are you going to take the microphone around? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Wayne Ball. I'm with the American Institutes for Research, and happy to be here with you once again.
Dean Zeitz. I'm an assistant director with the Kansas Department of Education.
Good morning, I'm Brian Dempsey. I'm an assistant director with KSDE.
Anna Moon Bradley, Kansas NEA. I'm the director of teaching and learning.
Trish Backman, School Mental Health Coordinator, KSDE.
Stacy Clark, I coordinate the State Interagency Coordinating Council for KSDE.
Joyce Broyles, I am assistant to Bert Moore.
And I'm Bert Morris, that's director.
And I am Alicia Nichols, one of the assistants on SIS.
Ashley Enns, Casey.
Thank you. Welcome everyone to SEAC this morning. We appreciate you being with us in person and those of you who are able to join on Zoom. Do we need to do any introductions on Zoom, Joyce? We have some folks.
Yeah, Robin Kelso is on.
And she's new.
Yes, and she is new.
Okay, do you have anyone else, a non-member that would like to introduce themselves on Zoom?
Oh, Mike Johnson. Thank you.
Okay, our first agenda item is to approve the agenda. So if you would take a look at the agenda, and if there's anything that needs to be changed, we can make that change. Otherwise, I would seek a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Brooke Moore, so moved for the agenda.
We've got a motion by Brooke Moore and a second by Marvin Miller. All those in favor of approving the agenda, please raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Did you have a poll choice? Did they raise their hand?
Alicia, are you doing the poll?
Yep, I'm good.
Did one yes, no other people voted.
Okay, next we will take a look at the minutes from the April 22nd SEAC meeting. Those were sent out, so hopefully you've had a chance to review those, but are there any questions or corrections related to those minutes? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the minutes, excuse me, from the April 22nd SEAC meeting.
Marvin Miller, I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from April 22nd as presented.
Got a motion by Marvin Miller. Do I have a second?
A second.
And a second by Jessica Lopez. All those in favor, please raise your hand or vote in the poll. Opposed, same sign.
You have 2 yeses on the poll.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. All right, we are 2 minutes shy of public comments. Did we have any public comments submitted?
No.
Okay, we will move forward with the agenda, and if someone comes in at 9:10, we can go back to it. So our next agenda item is open SEAC positions. Bert Moore.
Just want to remind you that we have the 2 positions currently open and a third one that may be open after today. We have the charter school membership. If you recall, when we selected to have a state position for virtual schools and we created that position, Robin Kelso was placed in that position. It is a state position. It is an active membership. The charter school, though, according to OSEP, must remain one of the members that we have to have on SEAC, and we don't have many charter schools in our state because they have to be associated with a school district. There's probably 3 or 4. So if anyone knows of anyone that may work in a charter school or be associated with one of those charter schools, we'd sure appreciate getting a nomination for that position. And then we also have Troy Pitch's position. He had reached his 6 years on SEAC, and he very much wants to thank everyone because he really enjoyed his time working with SEAC. But we have that McKinney-Vento position for an administrator of a program that oversees a McKinney-Vento. So again, if you know of an administrator or a teacher or someone that works with McKinney-Vento that could be a representative and serve on SEAC, we'd sure appreciate it. Any questions on that? It's a very quick update, but those are our 2 current positions. And we did change, or we are in the process of changing from Qualtrics, which is where we had placed all of our applicants, I believe, to Teams. Is that correct, Joyce?
Yeah.
So our application format will be Teams, so you might be looking for that.
I'm sorry, SurveyMonkey.
We moved to SurveyMonkey. So we used to have SurveyMonkey, and then we were told as a State Department we had to move to Qualtrics. No choices. And then we were told, oopsie, Qualtrics is too expensive, so we're dropping Qualtrics and we're going back to SurveyMonkey. So there you have it. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Okay, we have now reached 9:10, and I don't see any public here for comments, so we will continue on with our annual orientation with Wayne Ball.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Am I too loud?
Good morning, you're perfect.
Bert can hear me. I'm good. Okay. Well, thank you for, first of all, having me here with you again. As you know, I've been providing technical assistance to Kansas for over the last 25 years and attended most of your SEAC meetings, so it's always good to see this group. I just want to preface a little bit today. The State Advisory Panel is a requirement in the federal law. It's in statute that the states must establish a panel, and the things that I'm going to cover today with your responsibilities are all things that come out of the federal law, and so you're a pretty important group of people. You represent different constituencies around the state. Each of you has a specific reason for being here. It might be that you work with homeless, you're a provider, you're with the corrections, juvenile system, many other state systems. I don't see anyone from the legislature who today, but they're invited guests as well. But it's really important to know that it's a requirement in the law. States take it very seriously. And we've really had so much help over the last 40, 45 years because of the advice that comes out of the State Advisory Panel. So I just really want to reiterate how important you are. And also one of the requirements in the federal law is that you have an annual orientation. So we can kind of refresh your memory. And I think that Marvin's probably heard this presentation enough that he could do it for me, if I always have a backup. I like that. But the council members, just a little bit about the demographics of it. Each of you are composed of, special populations and demographics within the state of Kansas. And that you're either individuals with disabilities, you have children with disabilities, you have strong interest in disabilities to improve the education for youth and across the state of Kansas. Kansas includes giftedness as part of their membership. That's not a requirement in the federal law. The state has an opportunity to add additional groups. And so this SEAC represents and has for many years to bring that voice to the table as well. So you can read through these, but you're probably representing one of these groups. This is all of the required groups that are supposed to be sitting in the room with us today. And you can see it's quite comprehensive across the state. And an opportunity not only for you to express your feelings, but to express the group that you represent's feelings at these meetings. So we hope that you can bring that knowledge to the table as well. Any questions on the requirement there? Okay. Kansas also invites some ex officio members to the group. Our Parent Training and Information Center, and they're usually with us. Disability Rights Center, the Kansas Senate Education Committee, and the Kansas House Education Committee representatives, and they have attended various times back and forth, if there's something really going on in the state. And so it's nice to have even a few more voices with very important voices that are in this room. So the special rule, and this is in federal statute, is that the majority of the members, majority being 51%, of panel members must be individuals with disabilities and or parents, guardians of children with disabilities. We want the disability voice to be able to be heard, and I think that's been really a strong requirement in the law, and you can see the citation, the CRF number that requires us to do that. So again, one of the most important significant contribution that each of you can make is to represent your stakeholder group. Depending on how you were appointed and what group you represent. Reach out before the meetings. See if you can gain any input of what's going on out in the state and in your community and within this group. Or if you need to go back after the meetings and have discussions with members from the various groups, please do, because we want to keep that flow of communications across the state. Guests, it's an open meeting. We encourage guests to come to the meetings. We didn't have any this morning, but if we do, we'd have a special section that we would allow them to sit in. There's the vacant chair down there. Where's that guest at, Bert? God. And again, that's specifically required. And, I've done these orientations in a lot of states around the country, and sometimes we have some very interesting people or groups show up to be a guest at the meeting, and we always welcome that. So your primary role is advisory. What do you mean is advisory? So you advise Bert and his staff. You advise the governor. You advise Randy, the state commissioner. And you advise the State Board of Education, either through this group and Bert or directly. So you've got access to the top. And sometimes it's really important that you can bring your voice together to one of these various groups, and they all recognize the importance that, you know, the governor appoints this committee. And it's a vital part of our administration. Just quickly, I mean, I think these are 6 areas that are just really important and things that you do. So to give advice, to inform, to share with us what you know, to counsel. Sometimes Bert needs a little counseling, and so he likes that. To recommend, to suggest, and to guide. And I think that really is some pretty strong roles for this group to represent, and I know you'll do it well. Just thinking about, you know, how this process works. Either Bert or his staff or someone across the state or the governor's office brings out an issue to a priority to this group and says, what do you think? You then have an opportunity to share your thoughts, giving your personal experience and the background that each of you have that is so unique. We can get stakeholder input both from this group and from other groups. Then this group can have a discussion. So what's all this mean? What should we do? Where should we go? And hopefully out of that discussion, and any additional resources and information you need, you know, you can bring it into the group. But it really is to come up with an objective advice that hopefully will change in a positive way the improved services for children and youth with disabilities. Never forget that main thing. We're here for children and youth with disabilities, and that's always at the forefront, I know, of all the decisions that each of you make. There's also a place for advocacy. It's good to hear both sides of an argument and different viewpoints. So we invite advocacy both from you as members. You know, if we have a topic come up, you certainly have some of your own personal feelings you want to share, even though you're sharing the feelings of the group that you're representing. And in the final analysis, hopefully you can come to a consensus. The majority of the group agrees, here's the direction we're going to recommend either to Bert or the State Board or Randy, and that advice hopefully will lead then to improved outcomes for children and youth with disabilities. Pretty important stuff, folks. We also have special interest advocacy, the protection advocacy, which you saw earlier. We invited them to be ex officio members. in different disability organizations within the state and different professional organizations within the state. We really welcome everyone at the table and an opportunity for people to share their thoughts and feelings, because collectively we know with that goal in mind of improving results and outcomes for children with disabilities, the more input and advice we get, the better it's going to be. So, just a few things on the advisory council procedures. We have to require, or we have to meet all the state open records, open meeting laws. So we advertise this meeting in advance. People can either come in, they can call in. We provided an opportunity, as you saw, for a call in within the agenda. And this is a really interesting requirement in the law. I don't know if you know, over the last several years, there's been a lot of controversy across the states of using federal funds to buy food, to feed people, different things. They specifically require this, if possible, provide meals and refreshments at council meetings. And there's specific legislation from around the country that whatever it takes to help facilitate you to do this job, Bert's going to avail himself to it, and he's allowed to use the federal funds to do that. So I think, again, that's how important they feel about this, the importance of this group. So certainly one of the biggest jobs you have is to work with Bert, and that's a pleasure. But really, he relies on your ability to give him advice and the direction to go to what we need to be doing in the state. And so you'll find Bert always has welcoming arms to listen to what you have to say. We recommend, the federal law recommends you have a membership orientation, which we're doing now. That you understand the council functions. We have a group of bylaws for the group that I think as you became members, hopefully you've got a notebook to show you the guidelines and the principles. So you really want to be sure you understand what those are. The fact is, we talked about this advice. This is an advisory group. It's not advocacy in nature. It's really trying to give good, solid advice to improve results and outcomes for children. And an opportunity to discuss current issues and trends in the field of special education. Any of those around the country now? You know, with our new administration, you know, we hear talks about maybe, you know, we're going to change or do away with the Department of Education, or we're going to move special ed to Health and Human Services, and there's just, you know, all kind of different situations out there. So just know the federal law has not changed, the statutes have not changed what's in place right now. I can't even begin to count the number of lawsuits to try to combat these different thoughts. And for right now, the courts have said you need to leave special education where it's at. I mean, that might change tomorrow, but I think hopefully people really recognize the importance of this group and our children, and that it'll continue that way. So those could be some interesting discussions for the rest of this year, who knows. So some of the recommendations that I have, you know, for the council is that, you know, Bert establishes his priorities for the year and with his staff and what we want to do statewide from the data that he gains from the state performance plan, the annual performance reports, as well as the state level of determination of technical assistance determined by OSIP. Do we have it yet, Bert? Wow. I think that Kansas is the only state that has met requirements since this came in 2006. The first year they didn't make it, they had needs assistance because the feds put some different requirements in it they hadn't been planning for. Every year, it's unheard of, Bert. How do you do that? I know other states ask you all the time.
Just have a good team that focuses on.
You listen to your advisory committee. Good job. Also is that a Part C connection, you know, Part C in the law is the birth to 3. And they have, the Department of Human Health Services, they have counsel that is comparable to this counsel. And sometimes we have combined meetings between them. But certainly Bert and his staff share what's going on in Part B, which is the 3 through 21 requirement, with what's going on with 1 through 3. You know, we look at children from birth through the year they're eligible for services. And we use the established bylaws and the council operation to help do this. In Kansas, we use the Robert's Rules of Order. This is kind of a function for the meeting. As you know, your chair today has followed those extremely well and asking for your votes. And I think there's a handout in the materials that is just a quick snapshot of reminders of a couple pages of what is Robert's Rules of Order, how do I propose a question, how do I get a response, those kinds of things. So just take a little time when you get a chance to look that over. So now the big picture, and it's still this big picture today. We have the Department of Education. We have an assistant secretary, which is the assistant secretary for OSER, the special education and rehabilitation services. It gets into the adult sector as well. Now, assistant secretaries over the Office of Special Ed Programs. And then we have the state educational agencies. We have on the right, the lead agencies are birth through 3. And you can see the Special Education Advisory Panel. Some states call it panel, some call it council. So you see SEAC, sometimes instead of the SEAC, just know they're both the same thing and they're equally important. And we have the Intercoordinating Council, that is the advice for the lead agency for 1 through 3. But at the bottom, the most important thing, the main thing, infants, toddlers, and children and youth with disabilities. And in the middle, we have technical assistance projects, and Bert relies on those different centers that provide technical assistance around, well, there's one on the Center for Ideal Physical Reporting, data collections, those kinds of things. You know, with this last change in administration, they nixed the majority of the National Technical Assistance Groups at the Department of Education. Special Ed is holding in there. They've got their primary centers, and their dean informed me this morning, they just announced that they're going to recompete those and they're going to continue on. So the support for special education is just, it's hanging in there solid, and that's so important. Any questions on any of this, the organization? And okay. Here's Bert's job list. These are all the things that he's responsible for within the department. You can kind of read through those, but it's pretty comprehensive, and he has to report out annually on these, and that's how we get our determinations of meets requirements, because he does all these things. Pretty amazing. We like that. Any questions about those areas? It's a pretty comprehensive list, so just know that take special education very seriously. And the Kansas Integrated Accountability System, KIOS, is where this process works, and you collect the information and report out of and different things. So we've got a great state structure. The State Performance Plan, SPP, it's got 18 different categories now. It started with 15 and they changed it, and it used to be 15 was measuring Bert, the general supervision, and they said, well, they're doing such a good job, we'll just take that away. And some people quit doing that job. And now they're back, and we have this 18 that's called general supervision that is even more detailed than it ever was. But you can see that it's a pretty comprehensive list of all the areas that we try to look at and the importance for our children. It started back with the last reauthorization of IDEA, which was in 2004. The rates finally went into effect in 2006. And so we started with the state performance plan, the annual performance report, and the state's been doing that ever since, and having the levels of determination we talked about earlier. The state advisory panels and the state interagency coordinating council, the three, address the needs K through 12, early intervention, preschool programs. The U.S. Department of Education has had a website for years, and a link here that they have, they always have ideas at work. They have a special section just for state advisory councils and for the elite agencies that you can access. The only problem is, along with changes in administration, all of those are down right now. I went ahead and kept the link in. Hopefully they'll get reinstated someday, but if you go in and try to find the state advisory panel section, you won't find it. I'm sorry. So, but I decided to leave that in just in case they come back up, that you were able to access them. So just some of the national resources are available. Now I hope you're thinking, boy, I know more than I ever thought I was going to know. Or do you have additional questions? It really concludes our orientation, but hopefully that gives you a good snapshot of your roles or responsibilities and the importance of this group. So again, thank you for inviting me to come in and share with you today, and we'll have a great rest of the day. And Bert, are you buying lunch?
Yes.
Wow. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Bert, anything you want to add to the orientation piece?
I just wanted to say that in our state, we've added several ex officio members. You notice the ones that were up there that have been there for the longest time, but we also have added the Kansas State Board of Education. We've added the Kansas State School for the Blind, the Kansas State School for the Deaf, and the KNEA. And did I miss anybody?
Kansas Association of Special Ed Administrators.
Thank you, Casey. You're right up there at the top. That's why I missed you. Kansas Association of Special Education Administrators. And we really appreciate the ex officio members attending, because they get to hear the content of what we're discussing, and then they also get to take that back to their constituents and share information about what's happening in our state with special education. So I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Bert. Okay, any questions for Wayne before we move on to the next agenda item? Okay, then we're going to go ahead and move on. Bert, you are next with our director update.
Thank you. And once again, our annual report needs to be approved for 23-24. We forgot to get it approved at the last meeting, and so I'm asking that we could add that at this point. It's something that we put together as a KSDE group. I go through all of the minutes. I pull out everything that has occurred. I create a spreadsheet, And then I put together the annual report based upon the OSEP required activities that a Special Education Advisory Council is supposed to work on. So I put those in from 1 to 6, and I believe you received a copy at the last meeting. I hope you did, because you should have received it twice now. But if you didn't, we can make sure that it gets sent to you. I don't know if Alicia has that available or if Joyce does. Joyce has it available. So Joyce, if you want to send it out to the members, that would be great, so they get a chance to look at it. And we can approve that at the end, so that if you want to check that just to see what I'm talking about, you have that opportunity to view it. I just wanted to give you a little information that we did meet requirements. We had a few points deducted. I believe Brian plans to, I don't want to steal his thunder like I did yesterday in our team meeting. Just stole his thunder, told everybody we met requirements. He's like, that was in my, so we'll let him talk to you about that. One of the things that I did want to visit with you about, though, is how thankful I am that you choose to be a member of SEAC and an ex officio member of SEAC, because we really need your voice. Your voice matters. When we have these deep dive conversations, we bring topics to you, we truly are looking for your input, because you are a very important advisory council. When OSEP came, you'll remember that they had an interview with you all. They had Q&A with SEAC. There was one state early on that did not have a SEAC, and that was in their corrective action as part of their differentiated monitoring system, was they had to create one. I don't know how we could do this work without one. When I came on in 1995, I believe it was, Alexa invited me to a meeting. I thought I was going to hear information, and then she introduced me and said, and now Bert's going to tell us how we can reduce the paperwork for special education. So I just went into my song and dance about not requiring excessive paperwork, trying to limit the size of forms. Our IEP form was only 7 pages instead of what we have in some systems today of 50 or more pages. It was easy to fill out by staff, but more importantly, it was easy to understand by parents. Parents liked our IEP because of its simplicity, and they could understand it. So I think that made a huge difference for us in that ability to have that paperwork reduction, if you will. But I came on SEAC, and we would sit as a group for 2 solid meetings trying to come up with the annual report. So it would get developed in 2 full meetings. And I finally told Alexa, I said, Alexa, I think this is something that Deb Burns, who at that time was our senior AA, I said, I think she could put this together, and then all we have to do is look at it and we can tweak it and possibly then approve it. And that's how we started that. Well, then when I came to KSDE, I had Pat Bone as my senior AA. Shortly thereafter, she dumped me for the deputy commissioner. But anyway, we won't go there. I don't have any ill feelings still. But then I decided I wasn't going to have the new AA do that, so I started developing it myself. So when you see the annual report, I don't know if it's been sent yet or not. She's getting there. But when you see it, you're going to find all the topics that we discussed, the major topics, any decisions that SEAC recommended, they're going to be in the annual report. And it's something that we did give to the state board. We really don't need to have state board approval for an annual report because it is what it is. I mean, it occurred, but we do have to present it to them. Because one of our biggest jobs as a SEAC is to work with our state board. Because one of the things we did near the end of my 8 years on SEAC the first time as a member, where I was the chair right before I was the past chair, is Steve Abrams said, can you as SEAC, this is the first time we ever asked to do anything by the state board, can you please give us information on autism? We have advocates coming to the board and we don't know what's real and what's not. So we planned a full January session where we had Lee Stickle, we had the professor at KU, Simpson, who was known for his work in autism. We had another group come and they presented, and at the end of the day, we decided that one size does not fit all. There was an ABA group that was trying to push an agenda that ABA was the only thing that could be done with autism. And the state board really appreciated that. And then we had, I think, a little more stronger voice. And we have continued to have that because we are invited to come and present to the state board quarterly. So in those quarterly meetings, we provide them updates and things we're reviewing, and we also get to hear from them on things that we want them to tell us that they want us to look into. We also have a breakfast that we sponsor with the state board. I think that has grown to be a very effective communication link where we get to sit down and have conversations outside of board meetings to get to know the real people behind those faces and those votes so that they get to hear from you. Caller. Oh, we're glad. Probably a spam. So that we're able to find out information that you then can share with your board member, and you can hear from them in conversations about how they see their work working with us. So I think from an update, what are we looking forward to? Well, we're told that probably this month we will receive our DMS report. We were given a hint of that when Jarma sent an email to Joyce and I and asked to set up a meeting so that we could go over. She hoped to have it released because I believe they hired the attorneys back at OSEP. I mean, they fired everybody, and now they're trying to bring people back on. And so that's going to be important. And then once we get that report, our September meeting could be taken up with quite a few agenda items on any corrective action that's been recommended to receive your input and to give us ideas on how to move the work forward with the field. Because if we have corrective action, unfortunately that means we're going to have corrective action for the field and having to update policies, practices, or procedures, and that will take a heavy lift. And we'll be leaning on all of you to help us with that at that point in time. I just can't imagine that we're not going to have a couple of things they left us with when they were exiting. But we'll see. I'm hopeful. I'm a wishful thinker. The other problem that we're having currently is that we have received no allocations from Washington. So we're waiting to receive the letters that say, here's your money. We had preliminary allocations for IDEA and for Title I. And so we received these amounts that said you can pretty much flat fund it unless you had poverty issues where you lost poverty, in which case you lose Title I funds, which we did, quite a few. And so we have to make those up using another funding source because it's in the law that we do that. But we have no migrant, no neglected delinquent, we have nothing. And so we're telling everybody, just plan on what we had last year, because that was the information we were provided, is it's going to be flat funded. Because the big, beautiful bill has all the reductions in it for the next year's budget, not for this coming year's budget. So keep that in mind. If you're hearing people say, oh, they're going to cut all these, they're going to go to these 20 programs, and the states will have to decide how much money to put in each one. That's part of the big beautiful bill, but that's not till 26-27. That is not for 25-26, which is next year. Any questions on that? I think it's important you know that, because people could say, well, you haven't heard anything. Did they talk about that at the meeting? Yeah, they talked about that, and they haven't heard anything either. So it's really a nerve-wracking opportunity because we have a Secretary of Education who's trying to dismantle the Department of Education. And so I don't know that priority is on sending out the notices that you have money for next year. And then we've got bombing and other things that are more priority for some people. So we'll just have to wait and see, but I want everybody to feel that way. Yeah, Sean?
Or if it helps, I mean, at least the Federal Register is starting to announce things.
Oh, say that again.
So at least the Federal Register is starting to announce competitions for the first time in months, so if that helps.
Good. We're glad, because we also heard that NTAC-C is going to get an opportunity to reapply. So we're looking forward to that. That's pretty much my short updates for you. Did the SEAC annual report get out? Yeah. So those of you that have a device and can get it to work, you have it, but I can just give you really great confidence in knowing that we've already presented it to the state board. We just didn't ask for a vote because we didn't need to. And we just want you all to accept it and then it will go in the minutes as you accepted the annual report for 23-24. And that would be my ask. And then maybe we won't have to bring it back to the next meeting. But if you want to talk about it, we can bring it back to the next meeting. Because it really is your council. We provide you with opportunities for subjects and topics, but you have the ability to bring subjects and topics to our attention that you want us to address. We can do it right now. Everybody's ready.
Okay, are there any questions related to the annual report? I know we have seen that several times, so thank you for getting that out to everybody. Any questions online, Joyce?
No, John Harvey just said thank you.
Okay. All right, well, if there are no questions about the annual report, I would take a motion to approve the 23-24 SEAC annual report. Got a motion by Marvin Miller. Do I have a second? A second by Jennifer King. Okay, all those in favor of approving the SEAC annual report, raise your hand. Poll online.
Yeah, I launched it.
Okay, opposed, same sign.
One yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Bert. All right. We are running at a good pace here, so Brian Dempsey, please don't get us off schedule. Our next agenda item is Bert and Brian talking about the Education Funding Task Force.
Brian said, I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about with that. I sit on the Education Funding Task Force. It is a legislative group that is trying to come up with a new funding for education in the state of Kansas, effective in 2027. So it consists of legislators, it consists of superintendents. I'm there as a non-voting member, as well as Dr. Frank Harwood. He's a non-voting member. I think we're there more to answer questions of the group if they have any. It is a very engaging opportunity. That was the positive way to put it. You get to sit there and you get to hear them bring topics up as if you have prior information and you've never seen the information before. And they bring up 2017 and 2020 issues that came up as if the legislative post-audit that occurred over certain topics, like you can remember everything that came out of them. It really is a test in fortitude, ability to sit and act calm when inside you're going, what the? But anyway, topics that we have discussed include English language learners. We spent quite a bit of time on that at the last meeting. We've also spent at least one full meeting that Dean was my proxy because I was at the National Transportation Congress in Iowa. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, Dean was my proxy when they talked about special education. And they're looking at various funding models for what we could look at in the state to change the current way that we do our funding of special education. Our major distribution is through personnel. And the Kansas Association of Special Ed Administrators twice had debates and talked about should we change the funding model. And both times they came back to that personnel was the way to keep the funding model because it was equitable and it was fair to all. I'll give you an example. It's December. The Winnebago comes to town. It has 6 ID children who in the state of Colorado were all identified as speech language because they over-identified IDs. So rather than identifying them appropriately, they just called them speech language. So it took evaluations. It took added personnel because one of the students had some big needs and needed to have extra support. And I was able to add that staff knowing that I'd be able to gain the personnel reimbursement on those staff. Even though they're hired after the beginning of the year, staff can be added throughout the year and claimed for reimbursement. So it makes it fair for everyone when you have that big need child that moves in October, who wasn't there for your count date, and now is going to need a special purpose school that's going to cost you $100,000 a year. You also have then the catastrophic aid that you can tap into. So we have that, and we have transportation aid that's added into the mix for our major funding model. So they went to the states that surround us, Oklahoma, Missouri, Iowa, Colorado. They looked at one, I think Arizona. Somebody wanted to pull that in. And how do they fund? Well, some are completely, like Wyoming pays every cost for special education. There is no local cost. It's all paid. Yes, ma'am?
Can you say that again?
I said Wyoming pays all the costs for special education. You submit it and they reimburse you for the total cost. Some of the states are census-based, so it's based on the population in your area. So if you're in a suburban or an urban area, you're likely to get more funding. If you're in a rural setting, you're likely to get less funding. If you are student funded, it means that they have weights attached to students. So if a student is in a self-contained program for 60% or more of the day, they get this amount of funding. If they're up to 60 to 80%, they get this amount of funding, and if they're 80% or less, they get this amount. So in other words, each child generates funding based upon the severity of their disability. Those are the primary ways that we looked at it. And there's debate all over the place. We have one legislator who has just affirmed that there's no way she's going to allow the current mechanism to continue. And she's going to make sure it changes somehow, even though she won't have the vote to do that. But it is what it is. So I have two notebooks if anybody wants to come to my office. One is 4 inches thick and the other is 3 inches thick of the materials that we received at these 3 meetings, including the spreadsheets that are 8 font for each system. It's interesting reading. You really learn after the fact when you can go back and look at the spreadsheets that you receive at the beginning of the meeting, because they don't send anything in advance. It comes the morning of the meeting. They know what they're going to talk about. The people at the meeting don't know what they're going to talk about. But if you want to have an interesting view sometimes, get on the YouTube video, I believe it's YouTube, and you can watch it because it is being filmed as it occurs. And you can go back and watch sessions. And if you go to the legislative page of Kansas, you can find the Education Funding Task Force, and there you can see the materials and you can view what has been shared. Our next meeting is July 1st and 2nd. So guess where I am next week? I'll be across the street sitting there being very hopeful that I hear good information. And we're going to look at EL again for this meeting. And then in August, it's August 13th and 14th, and it will focus on special education again. So it'll be the 3rd meeting. And the first day, we start at, I think it's 9, might be 10. We go for about half a day. No, it's noon. Noon until 4, noon until 5 the first day. And then we come back the second day, and it's all day. It's like from 9. And they have elephant bladders because you don't take breaks. So I've never seen anything like it. You sit for 3.5 hours and nobody ever announces a break. Now the last meeting they did at 1:30, I was surprised. Maybe they had tea or something for lunch, I don't know. But Renee Erickson is the chair. And she tries to be objective, but once in a while she lets her opinion known. So it is an interesting watch if you really want to get some information that is very diverse. And you have legislators who want to know, how will this impact my districts? This has been very interesting to me. 2 of them in particular have asked that question. Well, wait a minute, I need to look at my districts to see how this will impact my districts. And I think that's a good thing, because that means they're really thinking about how it's going to impact the field. But they will bring this up for a vote at some point. And they want to bring it up in January of 26. They want to have this behind them for the whole year of 26, so that when we get to 27, we have this bill. So I will keep you updated. Anything changes or if there's been any recommendation or action that's been taken, I want you to know about it. So you may get an email from me from time to time, just bringing you up to speed, because you need to know, point in time. And then we can discuss it at the next meeting. Any questions about that? I'm trying to be unbiased and I'm trying to be objective because I have to be. I'm representing all of the children in Kansas with disabilities and exceptionalities. And I'm also representing the staff that serve them. So I have to keep that in mind as I sit there. And sometimes it's really hard for me to sit on my tongue because I want to say something, but I know it won't be productive and it's not going to help the discussion. You've got to let it work its course. So thank you. I appreciate this opportunity and I'll give it back to Lena.
Thank you, Bert. Our next agenda item is the SBP APR federal determination for 2023. Brian, is that going to be you?
Yay.
Yes.
I told him it's the B&B show today. WB&B.
Good morning, everybody, again. As Wayne pointed out and Bert emphasized, we did meet requirements for another year, and we're very proud of that. Also, Part C met requirements this year as well, and I want everybody to know that. I don't have a fancy slideshow for you today, but I did want to point, Bert pointed out, so they rate everything. So I wanted to point out a couple things. Bert said we have a good team, and we do, and we wouldn't meet requirements this many years in a row without the team. And how we divide the work, I think, is really something that speaks to that. So the 18 indicators are divided amongst the team, and so there's a lead and a backup for each indicator. And for the most part, that indicator goes with whoever does that work. So some states have like 1 or 2 people that write the APR, and so all that information gets fed up from people that are working with districts up to people in central office. We don't work that way. So we give people their leads, their indicators, and then they work with districts. So they're always thinking about this from not just a compliance standpoint and a monitoring standpoint, but how are we improving student outcomes? So I think integrating it fully into their role has helped us. So I think the next step for us, and we've talked about this briefly, not here, but internally, and we do get feedback from you, but I think what we need to do a better job of is then integrating the indicators as well. So how do they relate to each other? So it's one thing for Carrie Rogers to really know assessments back and forth, work with the field, and then bring that work back to the APR group, but it's another than how does that relate to all the other indicators? So we'll work on that. We lost 5 points. So the SBP APR meets requirements. They assign points. They look at timely and accurate data. They look at dispute resolution. They look at the indicators themselves and the results. And they look at NAEP scores. So 4 points we lost were on our NAEP scores, and that's the performance. So they tertile the nation, and essentially we're in the second tertile. Since they had 2 points for each area, we received 1 point. The other point we lost, so that was 4 points. The other point we lost was dropout rate. So our dropout rate, under the new calculation, every state uses the same rate now. We're at 15%, and that put us in that second tertile, and which was about 12% to 20%. So 0 to 11 would have scored us the 2 points, but we received 1. Otherwise, we received 100% of our points. So that was good, and I think that goes to everybody doing their job, the timely and accurate data. So we were really proud of that. There's something else I wanted to say about that, and I can't remember. Is there something I'm not mentioning, Bert, because we talked about this the other day?
If you had a slide.
Huh?
If
See?
you had a slide.
If I had a slide.
You'd have all your items.
But that's how they score everything. And that's where we ended up. So we're very proud of that. This just came out over the weekend, so that's why I didn't do a slideshow for you today. But we can come back, we'll visit with that. I think there's an indicator we might look at our baseline and targets. So maybe in September when we meet, we might have that for you for feedback. So we do appreciate all the feedback. And as Wayne pointed out and Bert talked about, you advise us and provide feedback to us, and how that applies to APR is indicator 8. So we have a little subgroup meeting, I think next week or a couple weeks from now, that we formed to help us inform how can we better utilize indicator 8 and information from parents, so that's parent input, and if they felt they were a participant in the process. Are there any questions? I mean, I want to keep us on track, Lena, so. Trish.
Okay. When I was at the juvenile correctional facility, and I know that this is, if Wayne correct me if I'm wrong, federal mandate, we had kids who would drop out and come back to us, and they would finish their GED while with us, but that still would count towards graduation rates. So is there any, we do have a lot of kids who may be marked as a dropout, but then they go on to finish with the GED. Is there any qualifier that can be part of our maybe post-school outcomes or data that we could include that, yes, while this kid did drop out, they did finish their GED and went on and did technical school? Is there any way that we can add that into the report? Because I do know there's a large population that does that.
It's a great question, Trish. And while you were talking, I remembered what I wanted to say. So
Good.
I'm going to come back to your question.
Okay.
What I wanted to point out, so when we assign that and our leads work with the districts, the other thing that they look at, this isn't checkbox scoring. They look at those compliance indicators and what our performance is. So for Lena's districts, for indicator 11, for example, timely evaluations, if she's not at 95% or higher, that would cost us a point if everybody was that way. So when we get that point, it's not just because we wrote something really nice and legal and checked a box. It's because Lena and all of her peers did their job at a rate 95% or higher. So that tells you on all those compliance indicators at 100%, we are performing at a 95% or higher rate. So I think to drill it down for directors, I know it feels sometimes that we come out and we are checking boxes, but working together and all of that then is going to the student, improving student outcomes. So Trish's question about graduation. So that students drop out, but they come back, they get a GED. The graduation, the goal is a high school diploma. And they specifically do not allow you to count GEDs, alternative diplomas, certificate of attendance, or anything like that. Our students are gen ed students first and should receive a high school diploma, and that's the measurement. And our graduation rate is 83% in the submission, so we were good there. Does that answer your question?
I don't like it, but
no,
yes.
I know.
Yeah.
But let me ask a follow-up question, because I think this is somewhat what Trish was going on. So we're good as far as the feds require that, but is there any way for us to capture of that 17% that dropped out, that did not get their regular high school diploma, that came back through one of our other programs to get their GED or something? Because that might be, I mean, I know it doesn't count for everything else, but I'd like to know it as a parent and in the field.
There's a lot of...
And I don't know if there's a way to capture that easily, but it might be.
We do capture it through post-school outcomes. Right. Because they are measured, even dropouts are contacted about what they're doing.
What were you going to say, Dean?
Oh, I see, we're not picking up on the mic. It's not getting up.
I just think that when we don't capture that very well, that the alternative schools that are doing all this incredible work, it just doesn't show up on the radar and doesn't show that our kids who have IEPs are still coming back and finishing, even though some little period of their life was really difficult, they still come back and they finish.
Okay, that's an A+ for finishing, but unfortunately it doesn't count in our number.
Right.
I mean, it's the idea that we have alternatives available to students.
Right.
But when we do our counts for federal requirements, they're not included in that, but for post-school outcomes, dropouts are included. So, I mean, we are checking to see if they found a position, if they did an alternate, are they working, are they enrolled in school, those sorts of things. So There, we do capture that information. It's just that one indicator that says it has to be a standard diploma.
And thank you, Bert, I appreciate that. I wonder if there's a way that we can take those two things, put them on one slide. So here's where we were met federally, but this is what additionally we did in Kansas, so that we know what that gap is and if we can continue to work on that gap.
One of our issues is with post-school outcomes, Andy Ewing is the person who does our indicator 14. We have so many students we can't find. We have so many students that we use a third party to do the contacting and then ask the 15 questions that when they see this 800 number, they don't answer the phone. So one of the things that we've been pushing and pushing hard is to have our systems do their own calls. Because if you get a call from West Elk and you went to West Elk, you're more likely to answer that phone number than if you get one from an 800 number that looks like spam. So that's the only problem, Marvin, that we have. If we could compare apples to apples and we had 100% of the connection, but we could give a partial, because we know what our indicator 14 data is showing us in post-secondary success. But there's a huge gap. I mean, we'll have systems that have 15 graduates and their data reports 1 or 0. And I mean, DDE makes calls. We pay them a lot of money to make calls to try and contact students. And well, think about it. You're a student, you went to high school, you used your parents' phone number. Your parents have moved, you now have a cell phone or you have no phone at all. How do you get contacted? And you're at work, so I hope, or at school. So it becomes problematic in just the system of how we try to do it, but it's the best thing we have and the best way we could do it. And we do like the data we're receiving because it is pointing to positive direction. But at the same time, until we can get 100% contact back, I mean, my teachers told the students, I'm going to contact you in a year. So be looking for that contact. And we had near 100% for my 3 districts as a result of doing our own survey. It makes a difference.
Thank you, Tricia, Marvin, and Bert. And I think it's also showing what this group is about and starting these conversations and what can we look at and maybe work on. I did think of a couple other things. Usually I talk to you about what were OSEP comments. And so I will tell you that the SPPABR comment period opens in early April. It's for 2 weeks for us to respond. And so like late March, early April, Bert sent an email early in the morning and said, hey, I think the APR, the OSEP comments are out. So I went in, pulled it down about 8 o'clock, and I couldn't find one comment on any of those indicators except for 18, which is me. And I thought, well, maybe it's not down. So I emailed Gary and Bert and said, I don't think it's up yet. And he said, yeah, it is. And I said, well, we got no comments. So the informal thinking across states was when they fired all the lawyers, they took out all the lawyer comments and program people said, we're sending this out. So for 1 through 17, we didn't have any OSEP comments that we needed to clean. And 18 was really just a little bit of cleanup, and we will appreciate this. So 18 is about related findings. 18 is your entire general supervision picture. So here are all your indicator non-compliance findings that you've reported 1 through 14, and those are based on codes of federal regulation for each indicator. So they also, so what 18 really is, what other findings did you make through credible allegations, dispute resolution, file review that relate to these indicators? So it gives OSEP a picture of your general supervision. How is it working? Is it working? Or what do we need to do? So we went through and we did all of that. And then 18 is a compliance indicator. So then they ask, of all these related findings that you found non-compliance, how did you correct them in conformance with 2301, which is their guidance on how you make findings and correct them? So we had all that answered. Their comment, they had 2 comments. One, we didn't copy and paste our findings from our indicators into the column, and they didn't pull them down automatically. The other was we needed to clean up our related finding language a little bit to align with 2301. So we did that. And in the final release, when we meet requirements, usually there's required actions that I go over with you. The required actions are all on the compliance indicators, and it's the same boilerplate language. The lawyers got hired again. So it's the same boilerplate language that we get every year. If you're less than 100%, you have to show how you got the district into compliance and make sure that each individual student that was not compliant received what they were entitled to. So that was it. And then 14, we need to address representativeness, but I think we get that one every year as well. And that kind of goes to Bert's point. That's the follow-up a year out, and it's just tough to reach those young people. And Andy will have a panel during leadership conference and one of the breakouts that will talk. He has some directors that have been pretty successful in reaching out to kids. So hopefully we build that feedback up, get that data increased to Marvin's point, and we can start looking at that and what next steps are. Do we need to go longer?
No, I think that's good. Thank you, Brian. We are running ahead of schedule, and so we are going to go ahead and take a 15-minute break. I know there's some coffee out in the hallway. If you're not familiar with this facility, the restrooms are straight out this door. So we'll come back in 15 minutes. Our meeting here.
Oh, so they're still next to campus.
So our next agenda item is we would like to discuss future agenda items for SEAC. And you should have received in handouts a chart that looks something like this. This was an idea of Marvin Miller, and so we thank him as our past chair. And then Bert put this together, and so I'm going to ask Bert to kind of review this information. We wanted everybody just to have a summary of some of the hot topics that SEAC has been covering over the last 3 years as part of our kind of orientation process and getting the new school year going, and then have an opportunity to ask for any other agenda items that you all might be interested in that are not represented on some of this work that we have done, or things that maybe we need to continue working on.
Thank you, Lena. So on this list, if you have it, fine. If you don't, I'll review it with you. We had some common items that we talked about in 22-23, 23-24, and 24-25. And so those common items are an orientation that we've had from Wayne. And thank you, Wayne, for continuing to do that. We really appreciate it. The State Performance Plan Annual Performance Report. Since one is due every year, that will continue to be a common item that we'll be bringing to you. And as OSEP changes any of their requirements, we'll bring those to you for your input so that whatever we come up with is acceptable, and we take your advice on that. The other thing that has really blossomed, I think, is teacher licensure. The shortage of teachers in the state is dynamic. At the last Education Funding Task Force, I did finally get a chance to talk because they wanted everybody to share. And they'd already shared about SPED and everything else, so the thing I shared about was professional development, that we needed to have money available for professional development in the field because we had over 1,600 open positions for teachers. I said, and that's the ones that they let us know about. I said, a lot of people have given up and they've just doubled up classes. And I said, when you double up a class and you're trying to do reading instruction with children and you have 30-some students in the class, if that child gets 10 minutes of individualized support in a day, that's a lot of time for that student because we just don't have the time. And so then I talked about some of the professional development interests that we've been working on with the federal funds, and that was another thing that you'll find on the list. All 3 years we talked about the stimulus funds that we'd received from the federal government and how those were being applied. But we did find out at the last teacher licensure meeting that we have 11 variants in how to gain teacher licensure. And I'm going to say from a highly qualified perspective for special education, it concerns me. because we have a lot of people that don't have the skill sets to teach general education that we're assigning to do special education. And that means that our kids are not getting the quality, I feel, of instruction. Now, some of those people are amazing. The paras that are in those programs, some of those were already working with students and doing a great job with them. I have to brag on them. I had several that we got in the Wichita State program immediately. And I had a couple of Title I paras that went to the ESCA conference with me when we were one of the distinguished schools, who ended up finishing their degrees, and one went into special ed and one went into general ed, and they're both outstanding. So I don't want to diminish that paras don't have knowledge, but there's a reason we have the 4-year degree program and that we have the extended learning through a master's program for special education. And as Marvin pointed out, when you're trying to do a BA or BS program and it requires 20 additional hours or more to even get the bachelor's degree to get both, you've got the equivalent of a master's degree. Then we've talked about differentiated monitoring. That came up. We were planning for it, and then last year it happened. Legislation has also been a huge issue. Frank Harwood, and before him, Craig Nineswander, would come and present some of the legislative outcomes that were taking place during the legislative session. Our state has legislative session between January and April every year. Some states have their legislative sessions every other year. We learn that when we get on the technical assistance side of things with TACE, who's out of Utah State University, one of our TASN providers, and they have directors of special ed east and west that meet once a month, and we get to hear things about what's happening in legislation, but you get to hear it too. We've looked at data trends, and then the big issue that developed in 23-24 was virtual programs and trying to serve students with disabilities in virtual environments. Very difficult for kids to get explicit instruction and to get the remediation that they need when they're online, I think. Especially if the environment the child is sitting in is not conducive to learning. I mean, I know one household that had 4 students that were doing virtual, and 3 were enrolled in one program and the other was enrolled in another program, and the technology alone for that mother to be able to support those kids blew my mind, but she continued to have them enrolled in the programs. Dyslexia. That was a topic that came up and that we reviewed and we provided some support for when it became a state category disability. We've also heard about some credible allegations like 259, when the Department of Justice said that they had to revamp their discipline policies and their ESI policies. And by the way, they've done amazing work, really amazing work, visiting with them about what they're doing. Indicator 8 became a topic last year. And then ex officio members, we've heard from, we added members. We added the State School for the Deaf and the State School for the Blind. And we added then the Kansas National Education Association. Those have been added. I'm looking down my list. We've had the breakfast with the board, so I wanted to put that on there. We were able to do that each year. The breakfast last year was horrible, and I apologize to any of you that attended. It came when it was 20 degrees, I think, below zero, and she tried to get it all in the back of her car. Some of it, I think, had been cooked the day before. It was chewy, if you could get your teeth through it. And so we will do better next year. There will be a better breakfast, and there better be a good lunch today. But do you remember that breakfast? Because I still remember that breakfast.
Clearly you do.
And watching those poor legislators who tried to act nonchalant as they tried to eat the sandwich.
They did give us a huge discount.
Oh, and they gave us a huge discount, is what Joyce shared, because we let them know how unhappy we were. We added indicator 18, and one of the, I think, highlights of the last 3 years was the visit to the state schools. That was one of the best opportunities, and those of you that missed that, I am so sorry, because we couldn't have been given more grace and a better opportunity to view the facilities and to get a feel for what students experience each day as they attend. And then also as the residential students stay overnight, we got to see the residential part. We didn't get to see the school for the blind, but we know it was going to be very similar to what we saw at the school for the deaf. It was great, and I think everyone that attended agrees with me. We did approve updates to the visual impaired fact sheet. We had an error on that where we had the wrong numbers, and we got that corrected. And then we had quite a few things come up with significant discrepancy for indicator 4B. We've looked at that for 2 years. We celebrated meeting requirements the last 3 years. Yay team and yay SEAC for helping us get there. CTE has presented to us, and then Dean had presented on the fiscal forum last year. So we've been doing a fiscal forum for a couple of years now and getting the field in and having Brewman here to provide updates. It's been a great opportunity. If you get a chance, I highly encourage you to do that. Still looking. One of the things that we looked at was graduation rates of virtual students compared to all students. I thought that was a great resource because then we could compare it to ELs and special education students. I thought it was great information. And then last year we received a virtual presentation by Dr. Grimwood. We looked at YODA. I think we introduced you to the Youth Outcomes Data Accountability last year, and that will be a topic we will bring back to you this year because you need to be aware of what we measure and how we plan to use it, because we're in the process currently of redefining what we consider to be the risk indicators for youth outcomes. We'll bring that back to you so that you get to see it. We're moving from, I think we probably had 11 or 12 indicators, and at the last meeting we narrowed that down to about 7. So we're trying to make it more focused on those important indicators that will drive youth outcomes.
John Harding said, thank you for visiting.
Oh, and John says, thank you for visiting the school. He did a great job. We had our SEAC meeting there, and it was a great tour. It was a beautiful day, sun shining. Got to see his soccer field, which is amazing, and talk about the competitions that they're involved in. Got to see their STEM resources, which blows you away. They have those machines that construct things. I don't know what they're called, but you put the plastic in and thank you. It's the printer that recreates the real object. That was so much fun, and those kids were so engaged in that. And then we added a state SEAC position for virtual. So I tried to just hit the highlights. I had 83 lines when I typed up my summary that I will build the annual report off of. But you'll notice here there's probably, 25 of them that I focused on for last year. And then this will build into the SEAC annual report that I'll prepare for December that we will present to the board in January. So any questions on that? And thank you, Marvin. This was a great opportunity to do that 3-year review, because at first I was like, wow, get to do more work. And then when I got into it, I thought, this is really helpful, because now I'm seeing common themes. I'm seeing the evidence of where we're headed in data and wanting data to drive our work, and then also interest areas that we'll continue to pursue. And now I think you're back to the original question about topics.
Thank you, Bert. So I know one of the things that we will continue to talk about this year is special education and virtual programming, and just continuing to dive into that and how we can better support students as well as districts that have students with special needs in virtual programs. Are there specific topics that this council, or members of this council, are interested in taking up this year that you want to discuss at this point?
I can bring this around to anyone, but I have two. The first is the Education Funding Task Force, going to be critical for what this committee is going to recommend to the greater legislature on how to fund special education in the future. So we'll want you to have a voice in that and to be present and at the table. And the second is we're going to have to look at the federal Department of Education and how our work is either going to stay with Department of Ed or move to a different agency, and what that will mean for our work and the requirements that we'll have, if any, that change. Those two I feel are critical that we're going to have to look at this year, and Sean has one too.
Well, just what you shared, Bert, also the updates on funding in respect to that, because that's going to continue to change. Where it sits, the reduction, is going to be block grants, things of that nature would be helpful to understand.
When Sean said the block grant means that the state legislature, the governor, or the commissioner, we don't know which at this point in time, would receive a pot of funds that then the state would decide how to distribute. And Dean has something he wants to share.
Correct. Just a footnote on the block grant conversation, because I think it's important for, as Bert pointed out earlier, there's a lot of confusion because there are so many different things moving right now. And I think you're probably well aware, Sean, but for the benefit of everyone else, as Bert noted, the mention of block grants, it's in the skinny budget that was proposed by the Trump administration, which has no effect, no actual power in and of itself. It's a recommendation to Congress that Congress would have to act on. The current reconciliation bill, which is also referred to as, it's actually titled the Big Beautiful Bill, that is working through Congress and is currently with the Senate, there's no explicit language in there that would require block grants. It's something that the Trump administration has explicitly said they would like to see, but in order to implement that, it would take specific action by Congress, and so far that wasn't part of what the House passed, and that hasn't advanced in the Senate piece. But it's something that is out there and being considered, but it would take Congress actively rewriting parts of the law, multiple parts of the law to do that. But yes, to Bert's point, we'll keep you advised.
Thank you, Dean. Two other things that came to mind. One is Medicaid. I don't know if you're aware, but Medicaid funding has become an issue in our state. Back in 2015-16, a ratio was used to figure out the excess cost for Medicaid, and then districts receive funding based upon that ratio. The fallacy in the ratio was it was supposed to be based on paid claims, and it was based upon those claims that had been submitted. So a lot of those claims were never paid. So what happened was districts were overpaid for 9 years, according to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. So they have to come up with about $14 million in payback this year, which is really going to hurt the finances of school districts. So we as a council will more than likely be hearing reports on Medicaid, and there's also a Medicaid expansion grant that KDHE has been given, and we're to be involved in that, but right now our council, general counsel, is reviewing that proposal, and the language in it is not acceptable. It is asking for information that is PII, and our agency typically does not give out PII, so it's going to require some modification if that's something that we're going to do. And so he's working on it with KDHE, but there's a training going on the 25th against the objections of Dr. Harwood and myself for those people that complete the billing that's being provided by a third party for those people that fill out the billing forms. And that went, we heard about it a week ago, and then wanted us to send it out to everybody. So they've gone ahead and sent it out themselves, and we have said all along with our executive director Stanek at KDHE that we want to work with them and that we need to have a committee formed where we have local providers and KSDE at the table, and we still don't have that formed. So we'll work on Medicaid, we'll give you updates on that. It's going to be critical that you all have a voice in that and that you're knowledgeable about what's happening there. $14 million, one district in tears called me and she said, I've got to come up with $240,000 and I don't have it in my budget. And I don't know how we're going to make that because my districts are telling me, my small ones, we can't afford any more first bed. So this is a problem in our state, and it's going to be a problem this year if we're flat funded. And the other thing I thought of that you all are going to need to be involved in is Part C to B transition. I think we need to have, we have Stacy here representing the Interagency Coordinating Council, and we have Jennifer King representing SEAC on the Interagency Coordinating Council as ex officio members, and we'll need to have maybe some reporting on what's happening between C and B, because Brian and I have been involved in a lot of conversations, so has Stacy, about certain systems that it's felt are not providing the best support for parents and for providers and infant toddler. Even though their data shows that they are not having that many issues, it's an issue of communication between C and B. And it's like a war of words going on. It's our job at Part B to do whatever Part C says, well, we're recommending this and you need to have us at the table and listen to us. And Part B is saying, thank you, we'll take it from here. So we're going to work on that issue because we have to. It's important that we do that. Yes, Melanie?
Just a quick question, that third party that you referenced, I don't know who they are, but would you say that they are they the right people to be giving that kind of presentation?
Never heard of them.
Okay.
On Medicaid. Never heard of this group. It's not PCG. So I have no idea who these people are that they have contracted with to do this training.
Are you referencing the meeting on Thursday with Healthy Blue Kansas?
This is with Gainwell or Gain something, and it's something that Heather Gould has set up and sent out to superintendents who she wanted to send to their billing agents for Medicaid.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure what that is, but Healthy Blue Kansas has organized a meeting Thursday from 11 to 12 with some stakeholders. Not exactly sure the topic, but I'll be on it.
Hadn't heard about that one. Brian, anything you have? Nope. Anybody here have other ideas? Uh-oh. I'm in trouble now.
I'm going to go ahead and change the topic a little bit and take a look at, we've been talking about Indicator 8 this past year and the survey, and I don't remember where we are on that, if we're still working on that. But we'll get an update from that later maybe, but that goes back to parent involvement and engagement. And as this is my 12th year now, so I've been around a little bit, and I'm starting to wonder, we do a lot of stuff here at the state level, but do we need to start looking at emphasizing local educational advisory councils with districts and co-ops? I don't know if we have many of those out there, but that's the grassroots where the parents are, where there's parent training locally, and that would get our engagement numbers up. But also I think as we move into some of this education, special education funding issues, we need to get that out to our local parents and advocates out there as well. So I think this, what can SEAC do to support local types of these things? Because I know the districts can't always do it all alone, but we have some experience. So I just thought we could put that on an agenda sometime in the future.
What has been done in the past is a letter has been drafted by the SEAC chair once the SEAC members agree to it, and it's sent out to all special ed agents, all superintendents, and then that would give them the information that says that we think it would be valuable, especially during these times of change, that they have a grassroots effort to
bring about a parent-family engagement opportunity to discuss special education issues. So we've done that in the past, sent letters out, and that because we're advisory, that would be the role that you would have, to advise the systems that it's timely and that we highly encourage them to engage their public, to have conversations about special education and students with exceptionalities, because if you get the gifted parents involved, you will have a lot of engagement. Anytime that the legislature ever talked about doing away with gifted, it didn't take very long before they changed their mind. So we know that they can be highly engaging.
Okay, are there any other topics that anyone is interested in making sure we cover this year? And there will be opportunities throughout the year to get input as well. This is no one and done. So. Okay, well, our next agenda item is Medicaid. Bert, you kind of covered it. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I don't have the exact figure in front of me, but there is a huge amount of money that our state pulls in when we do Medicaid billing, and we get paid. $70 million, I forget what the actual amount is, but it is a huge amount of money. And there is talk at the federal level to do away with Medicaid at the school level. And that would be very damaging to our current systems who depend on those Medicaid dollars. Because I mean, that district may be paying $240,000 back in future payments, but they may be receiving over $1,500,000 in payments. And there's also admin claiming that's allowed that most people don't even know exists, where you can claim on those staff that support letting parents know about Medicaid and getting signed up for Medicaid. And that administrative claiming brought in more money than my fee-for-service ever brought in at Chautauqua County Special Services Cooperative. So I'm just saying, if that goes away, there's a huge hole. And right now, KSDE is looking at finding $2 million in our $20 million budget because the legislature enacted bills that said we're going to keep this in the bill, but pay for it with existing funds. Well, that comes out of our budget at KSDE. So we already have a reduction there. And we're looking at downsizing in our office to try and figure out how we can save some rent money because they've raised the rent in our building. So everything's going up except for our ability to make our payments. And so it's a problem we're going to have to deal with. But I did want you all to be aware that Medicaid is a huge, I mean, there were districts years and years ago when I first started out, when we started billing, and Dale Dennis said everybody needs to be doing fee-for-service. And we were like, we don't want to fill out all that paperwork and do all that. Well, you better. And we ended up getting $21,000 a year in Medicaid back in that time. And I think right now they get over $100,000 in those 3 districts. So it's a huge chunk of change to help pay for staff and bills. So I think that's important that we not forget that. It's there and it's available and we want to keep it there. So whatever we have to do to advocate to keep Medicaid, I think we as an advisory council, you as an advisory council can help us support that need.
Are there any questions related to Medicaid? Okay, then we are ready to move on to ex officio reports. I'm not sure, do we have Leslie from Families Together or someone else?
Leslie was online, I don't know if she's still is.
Hi everyone, yes, I still am. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Am I able to share my screen? And if not, it's fine. I can send the report and Joyce can share it with everyone.
Just give me 1 second.
We're working on that, Leslie.
All right, thank you.
You should be able to. Hit stop.
Okay, give it a try.
Are you able to see it now?
We're getting it on our screen here in the meeting. Just a second. Yep, you're good to go.
All right, great. So before I jump into this, I will just circle back to the conversation about local special education advisory boards real quickly. Thanks for bringing that up, Marvin. I just wanted to note that there are several across the state, and many times we are asked to provide information and training. It might be kind of cool for us to figure out exactly how many local boards there are in place and where those are at. So, I mean, I could try to do a little bit of that, and if anyone else has information to share, that would be great. And also wanted to note, because of Marvin being in the, I think not in Wichita district necessarily, but in that area, that I was contacted by a Wichita parent just this week who is working with Wichita administrators to try to get one going for USD 259. So thought I would give that quick update. Most of you have seen this report, but I will go over it brief because I know we have maybe 1 or 2 new members. So this report is looking at the types of contacts that we've had over the last few months. I try to do these on a quarterly basis, so this is for April through June. So not completely complete as far as June goes, so I'll run a new one eventually just to get these last few days. But things have slowed down a bit for us. I looked at our individualized consultations and training. This 1,883 represents about a 32% drop, and I think that is primarily because of school ending and getting into summer months. Not a lot of change relative to percentage breakdowns. We did have a bit of a jump in serving the 3 to 5 and 6 to 13 age range. So 3% of a jump in the 3 to 5 over the last quarter, and about a 2% jump in the 6 to 13. And so where that went down was in the 14 and up categories. And so again, just for the sake of anyone who hasn't heard this before, I'll just briefly say that when we look at the pie chart, this represents the type of service that we're giving to parents and educators or professionals. And so if you look at the orange, that represents tier 2. So we break our parent assistance down into 3 tiers. And so tier 1, would be less intensive than tier 2 and tier 3. So it's much similar to the MTSS system. So it's, not surprising that when you look at, the orange and the green and the blue here, that represents the work we're doing with parents, which is primarily what we're doing most of the time. Tier 3 is just, when it gets a little more extensive and maybe parents are, navigating a lot of different systems or involved with a lot of different agencies, or they just have some concerns that take a little bit more time, and we might be doing a deeper dive into reviewing documents for them and just providing more one-on-one assistance. The tier 3, or the IEP mentor, this little sliver of blue right here, that means that we actually attended an IEP meeting with parents. And so when we take them through our IEP mentor, we use person-centered planning through the life course, charting the life course framework, and then we attend a meeting with the team, and then there is a follow-up evaluation after that. I think I'll have anything else to point out here. This pie chart down here just kind of breaks it out a little bit more succinctly, so you can really see that a lot of our time is spent with families and in training. This just gives you the primary disability of the child that is being helped. So when the parent is being helped, but what their child's primary disability is. Not a lot of change there over the last quarter, except for that we did have a pretty big decrease in the suspected disability, which I like to see, because sometimes the suspected disability is this, that we don't have as much data as we wish we did, but sometimes it truly is, suspected disability, meaning that there's been no identification. The second page, this gives you just a listing of the top 20 content items, so why are parents calling, what is it they're looking for, what do they need, and then there's also the other kind of interest categories down below that we try to track. Education advocate numbers, again, you can see that things slow down a little bit as we get into May and June, but still a very big part of what we're working on, and very busy program. I know that Lisa and Brian have been working diligently so that they can get the annual report ready to send over to Bert and Brian very soon, so that'll probably come on Monday. And we've been trying to highlight some different things that we're working on. So we have a Chase Your Dreams podcast that there is a live link. So when Joyce gets this sent out, you'll be able to pop onto that and listen to Lamar Nixon talk with a couple of our team members. They did a great job just kind of discussing parent involvement and, his experience with families together is through our Chase program. He shares a little bit about his son and their involvement in school and the justice system. So just inviting you to check out that podcast or any others. We have a lot of those on our website. And I think that about does it for me. I will send Joyce this. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I will be in Wichita in person later today so that I can see many of you tomorrow at the leadership conference.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. Look forward to seeing you. Ashley, oh, yes. Melanie, did you?
I'm further down the list.
Okay, all right. Ashley?
I'm not hearing that if someone's asking a question.
No questions.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick update, and I'll send this to Joyce as well, with just a couple resources and links for Casey, explaining what the Casey organization does for some of the newer members. Just a couple quick updates. Lena has done an amazing job as president the last couple of years, so thank you for your service. Angie Carricker, am I saying that correctly, will be taking on the role of president, and April Hilliard will be president-elect coming forward in the next 2 years. Usually we share with you guys kind of the calendar of events for not just our organization, but also some of the other things that are coming up that are related that you might be interested in, so we'll continue to do that. The new calendar will be ready probably a little bit later in July, and we can share that at our September meeting. Most recently, Casey had sent out some letters of support that may be just of note, and so I've linked those as well in the report that I'll send on to Joyce. But the first was just a letter sent to KDHE and KSDE to support the formation of a group to start discussing Medicaid more in depth, as Bert had alluded to earlier. And then the second was in support of a grant proposal that was really focused on collaborative approaches to special education leadership. And so Casey wrote letters of support for both of those. So again, I'll include those, or those are included in the report, and I'll send that on to Joyce. Okay, thank you, Ashley. Next, we will have the Disability Rights Center. Mike on.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep, you sound good, Mike.
All right. Gosh, I'm trying to think of where to begin. I mean, so with some of the stuff that I'm trying to think, because the legislature essentially wrapped up at our last meeting, so there was a lot there. It's going to be interesting kind of to watch what happens with the waivers. We, I guess since our last meeting, spent a lot of time working with KDAD's convened some stakeholder groups to discuss kind of some significant changes to the IDD waiver specifically with the goal of coming into compliance. Is there working with on a corrective action plan with CMS in regards to the final settings rule. And so through those discussions, I think it was a lot of good, but a lot of good discussions. Anytime you can get different parties all in the room talking, there was a lot of really good discussion. But it ended up taking there were 8 one-hour meetings a week for 2 months. And so there was a lot of time. And you could sign up potentially for 1 or 2 or 3 of the groups, but I went ahead and signed up for all 8. Just because there weren't very many, the family perspective wasn't there. There were a lot of providers in the groups, which again is great. We had a lot of good discussion, but it'll be interesting. We'll watch over the next few months as KDET kind of tries to distill all that and use those stakeholder recommendations to make some adjustments to their proposed policies to come into compliance with that plan. And it's all relevant because we have, they're working on trying to file the community sports waiver and get that one on the books, and which will be a non-residential waiver targeted for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. It kind of really has a lot of employment focus. And so we're still a ways. I think their goal is to try and have that come online at the end of the next fiscal year. So basically about a year from now, hopefully that will be coming online. It'll be another tool to help address the waiting list. So there's lots of other things going on, but that'll kind of gives you a little bit of a feel of some of the things that have happened here in the last 3 months. So any questions?
Any questions for Mike? Thank you. We appreciate your update. Next, we'll hear from Melanie Haas with the State Board.
Thank you. There we go. So in June, the State Board of Education went over the budget. And so in July, what that means is when we think about what the state budget for education looks like, the board reviews it in June, and then we will vote in July. And typically the way this process works, I'm serving my 5th year on the state board. So my entire time that I've been there, we've had Governor Kelly, who has been very friendly to education. And the way that the board usually goes through the budget is the governor sends us her budget. In June, we go through the budget line by line, and if you watch the board meeting, you can pull up the June meeting. We would go through, year over year, we would go through and look at a pretty detailed list of expenditures, what she has potentially allocated, and then the board will have a discussion and talk about, do we like this number? Do we want it to be higher or lower? Do we maybe not want to make a recommendation on this item, meaning that some folks might not agree with the item? Typically, we don't see very many of those, but because the legislature drafted the budget this year, the process is looking a little bit different. So we went through the education department's budget in June, and then during our July meeting, we will go through. And we were directed in June that what we really want to do this time, rather than taking an aspirational approach, where we go line by line and say, we really like, for instance, one that I have supported would be transportation, buses for CTE programs. And so if the whole board can agree that that's an item that's a priority, then we call that an aspirational vote. We're like, yeah, you should put in the money for that. We're asking the governor to keep that included. What we're doing this year is a very different approach where we're looking to have just 1 or 2 things that we can say to the legislature. These are the most important things to fund in the in the education realm. And I think our number 1 item is probably going to continue to be special education. For the past several years, the state board has voted on these items during the summer, and we keep coming back to we need to fully fund special education. So I encourage everyone to build relationships with, if you haven't, or talk to your state board member and make sure that they're hearing your perspective, because that will be a July vote. And like I said, you can go back and look at the June meeting and you can see that segment where we go screen by screen. It's a little less tedious this year. There are a few less screens, fewer lines to go through, and it's a good conversation to hear just as you think about what special education funding looks like. And then, let's see. Jim Porter is our representative on the Special Education Funding Task Force. So I just wanted to throw that in since Bert talked about that a little bit. He has been doing a fabulous job. I just really appreciate the time that he is spending in Topeka. He is one of the few board members. Jim actually served as a superintendent in Missouri and then came here to Kansas. He retired here in Kansas, and so he has a lot of experience in this space, and we are thankful for his service on that task force. And is one of the few who has actually worked in an education job. There are 10 of us. Right now, of the 10 of us, only 2 state board members have had a professional job in public schools. And then we have established, as of last month, a task force on school improvement for the Kansas State School for the Deaf. And those meetings have not started yet. The first meeting will be on, I believe, June 3rd, which is a Thursday. Our meetings will be on Thursdays throughout the summer. It's not every Thursday, so you'll need to check the calendar if you want to see when those are, because there are a few Thursdays that we skip. But those are going to go on for about 3 months. And that came out of public comments, in part, that came in front of the state board. So during our meetings, we had parents come and say, we need to have a discussion about a lot of things at the school. And so I don't yet have a view for what the agendas are going to look like because those haven't been established. We just had one short meeting to figure out how we're going to have the meetings, so we know that they will not be broadcast. There's not going to be you won't find it on KSDE Live Media. Part of that is because it's really challenging to have an interpreter in the room and an interpreter for the ELL families. And so the idea was, by keeping all of the attendees in that room at the School for the Deaf, it will still be an open meeting, so anyone who wants to come can come and be there in the room, and then you can also benefit from having access to those interpreters. But the school administration felt really strongly that we needed to have that experience for the families. And so that will be kicking off in July. And that's my update for this month. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Melanie? Okay, thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to be a part of our council. All right, is John still on with the State School for the Blind?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Real quick, thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to SEAC for visiting our school. Invite you to come back soon. Quick updates. Our ESY extended school year on the road is going on. We serve over 200 students across the state. We've gotten so large we've had to divide our on-campus program into 2 sessions, all of them in June. We also went to Concordia this year, Wichita, Topeka, and Barton County. We had a session in Claflin, Kansas at Camp Aldridge. So we're excited to expand our ESY. We're doing a cerebral vision impairment. It's the number one cause of blindness. Are students with visual impairments across the country, including here in Kansas. Diagnoses are increasing, and we're looking to invite others into that conversation and do some education. That'll be next spring in Wichita. And then finally, we're focusing on transition and moving students back into their home communities, their home schools, with a skill set. We think that there's room for expanding pathways for students. So when they come here, we have Project Search, we have college opportunities, but we want to expand pathways for kids in skill building. So we're working with our community, our nonprofit, to seek out some funding for those programs. We think the Carriage House, which is our oldest building, would be a great home for that. So stay tuned. Again, thank you for coming out, and please come back soon.
Okay, thank you, John. Anyone have questions for John? Okay, School for the Deaf, is Luann on or is not? Okay. And no one else to begin the report? Okay, very good. All right, KSDE.
I don't really have a report other than to introduce myself to the group. I was a teacher here in Kansas for 18 years. I taught high school English in small districts, most of that time Maritime Valley and West Franklin. So I got to work a lot with the employees of the Three Lakes Special Education Co-op. I've spent the last 8 years as a UNICEF director for Kansas NEA up in the northeast corner of the state. So I had like the Donovan Co-op, I had Brown County, worked with Holton Sped. So I've been around the SPED world quite a bit, but looking forward to hearing more about the issues and working with this group.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other ex officio or comments?
Is Robin still on?
Robin, are you still on?
I didn't say anything earlier because I thought Robin was going to announce it to the group today, but she has taken another position. She will be a UniServe person working for Wyandotte County with KNEA, and she will start there next week. So she will no longer be our virtual contact. I'm sure the position may be posted. We'll see. Is she on?
Yeah.
All right, there's Robin. Robin, do you want to say anything?
Hey, I'll just echo what was said to the word. Although my time was limited with y'all, I've enjoyed every minute. In the future, if you have openings for willing public servant, but perhaps not KSDE employees, keep me in mind. I think this group has the potential to do a lot of powerful things. It has historically done some powerful things. So keep up the good work, everyone.
And thank you, Robin, for your brief service, because we just put you in a position and you're off to a different position. Godspeed, and we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay, any other reports or comments from? We have plenty of minutes.
The one topic that I would like for this group to discuss that has become, I would say, a passion of mine is artificial intelligence. I had someone come to me and say, we'd like to use artificial intelligence to write IEPs, and my first response was, no, time out. And then I started reading about it, and the way that artificial intelligence is designed, it can support a student with a disability by providing tutorial assistance, by giving them guiding questions, taking them back in the chapter to where they can review content, then giving them some more cues, taking them back to prior learning if necessary, but it never gives the student the answer. Because a lot of people think artificial intelligence just gives them the answer. When it's set up as a tutorial, it can be very helpful for that child to work independently and not have to wait for a teacher to come over and respond and have to then find the page and do the review, etc. So I know that we have an expert in the room right now, in Sean Smith. He probably won't say he is, but he definitely is, being an assistive technology leader and helping us to create the Infinitech program years ago, but he might be able to provide us with some information at a future meeting to support how artificial intelligence can support students with exceptionalities, so that we look at it from the lens of students with disabilities as well as students that are gifted. But that just had hit me, and I thought I need to bring that up because that is a topic this group could provide some advice to the field on. People are afraid to use it because they think it's going to give kids answers. But the 3 books that I've read on it all suggest it's more of a tutorial support that helps guide a student to find the answer independently.
Thank you, Bert. I do think AI is going to continue to be a hot topic in the field of education. Joyce, do you happen to have the meeting dates that we could put up on the screen or not?
Yeah.
I have the next one, I only have one.
You only have the next one? Okay.
Hey, Alicia, if you I can give you a copy.
Well, I've got electronically.
Okay.
So I just want to review the meeting dates. Our preference is always to have people participate in person. I think we are able to have richer discussion that way. So if you could prioritize in-person attendance at the meetings, we would really appreciate that. The next meeting is September 24th, and that'll be in the Land and State Office Building from 9 to 3. Following that, we'll meet on November 19th, again, at the Land and State Office Building. And then in January, we will have the breakfast with the board again. And so we'll have a meeting on January 13th, and then the 14th will be the breakfast followed by a meeting. So that's our only 2-day meeting. And then our final meeting of the year will be April 22nd. So if everybody can get those dates on their calendars and try to arrange transportation in person, if at all possible, we would greatly appreciate that.
And I did send these out.
And everyone should have received the meeting dates from Joyce.
Another thing. As most of you know, if you are a member of SEAC, we provide reimbursement. So you need to work with Joyce. I believe she has forms. Did you bring them today? So Joyce has forms for you to submit. How many of you are staying for the conference? That's outstanding. Thank you. That was one of the reasons why we have this meeting now, and I'm glad Marvin suggested that we have it during leadership so that you could attend the conference. So if you want to wait and submit the form at the end of the conference, then you submit it to Joyce, and then she works on that reimbursement to get you reimbursed. And if you have any questions about what's reimbursable or how we work that process, Joyce can answer those. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if any of you have questions, you can come up to her and ask her as we conclude the meeting before lunch.
Okay, we'll talk about the instructions for lunch in just a second.
I have just a quick question. Yes. On the dates that we got sent to us, it says April 22nd, 2025 and January 2025, but that should be 26, right?
I'll get it corrected. Thank you. I didn't catch that.
But the days are correct?
Yeah, the date is correct.
The date is correct, just not the year. Yeah.
So the food isn't out yet, but the room is available, and if you want to transfer over to the room, there's tea and water there, and then when they put the food out, you can come out and help yourself. It's right in the hallway. But they don't have hot food out yet, because they weren't expecting to have it.
Okay, and are we having lunch with another group, or is it just us?
It's just us.
Okay, all right. Well, then, before we move to the new room, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
I've got a motion by Jessica Lopez and a second by Brooke Moore. All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.